Princess Amara stood on the balcony of the royal palace, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting a fiery glow over the once thriving kingdom of Nchua. A few months ago, this view would have filled her heart with pride. Now, all she saw was the barren wasteland, both outside and within her soul. Her father, King Nnaji, had ruled justly, and Nchua had flourished under his reign. But everything changed the night her father was killed by a treacherous coup led by her uncle, Prince Yuzo. "I have waited too long for this," Yuzo had sneered as he stood over her father's body, his hands drenched in blood.
"Now, the throne is mine."
The pain of that moment still gripped Amara's heart. Her uncle's betrayal was personal, but the way he twisted the kingdom's people into his followers, promising them riches and power, was an unforgivable act. She fled into the wilderness that fateful night, leaving behind her title and her people, hoping for a chance to one day return and reclaim what was rightfully hers. Amara, her father's words echoed in her memory, a voice now soft but steady, "You are the heir, never forget that." But how could she reclaim her throne when she no longer had an army, a kingdom, or the resources that her uncle wielded? The path ahead was perilous, and the journey would demand everything from her. Months had passed since Amara had fled into the thick jungles of Nchua. She had trained with local tribes, learned to survive on her own, and kept her distance from the world that once knew her as a princess. The journey inward was as brutal as the one that led her here. Amara wrestled with feelings of guilt, anger, and loss. The ghost of her father haunted her, and the weight of her kingdom's destruction crushed her soul. But deep inside, there was still a fire, an ember that refused to die. She had been born a leader, raised to take her place on the throne. Her bloodline was powerful, and she would not let Yuzo's betrayal be the end of her story. "I will return," she whispered to herself one night, the flickering light of the campfire casting a glow on her determined face. "I will reclaim what is mine." Her eyes hardened, and with them, a plan began to form. To defeat her uncle, she would need to gather an army, find allies in places she had never considered, and face the demons within her heart that still sought vengeance. Amara's journey took her to the village of Nkani, a remote settlement known for its warrior tribes. She was welcomed by their leader, a woman named Amina, who had heard whispers of the princess's survival. Though initially wary, Amina saw something in Amara that reminded her of the fierce determination she once had in her own youth. "Why would a princess like you want to fight?" Amina asked, the firelight dancing in her sharp eyes. "You do not need this war." "I cannot escape what is in my blood," Amara replied, her voice steady. "The throne is mine by right. I will take it back, even if it means sacrificing everything." Amina saw the strength in Amara's words and decided to offer her help, agreeing to train her and introduce her to the other tribes of the region. Over the following weeks, Amara learned the ways of combat, both physical and mental, forging alliances with warriors, scholars, and those who had suffered under Yuzo's rule. But not all were convinced she was the rightful heir. As Amara's training continued, she began to hear rumors of unrest in Nchua. Yuzo's rule was far from stable. His promises of prosperity had quickly dissolved into poverty and corruption. The people of Nchua, once loyal to him, began to whisper of a lost princess, of a ruler who would return and restore the kingdom to its former glory. Amara knew the time was approaching for her to return, but doubt still clouded her heart. "Could your bloodline may be royal, but it does not guarantee loyalty," he said, his tone harsh. "What makes you think you can lead a war? What makes you different from the tyrant you seek to overthrow?" Amara's heart pounded as she fought to keep her composure. "I will do whatever it takes to restore what was stolen from us." Jibril studied her for a moment before nodding. "I will help you, princess. But understand this. There will be no turning back once we embark on this journey." As Amara's forces grew stronger, so did her doubts. She began to wonder whether everyone in her camp was truly loyal. It was during a council meeting that Amara discovered a terrible truth. One of her closest allies, a former general of her father's army, had been feeding Yuzo information. "Amara, the truth is this," the traitor confessed, his voice trembling with fear. "Yuzo is a ruthless man. He holds the people in fear. I did not believe you would succeed, but I see now that you are a force to be reckoned with." Heartbroken, Amara faced a difficult decision: punish the traitor or use him to her advantage. She chose the latter, extracting vital information about Yuzo's movements and using it to her benefit. But the betrayal gnawed at her, and a deep anger began to simmer within her. Amara and her army finally reached the gates of Yuzo's stronghold, a towering fortress perched on a mountain. The time had come to face her uncle, the man who had taken everything from her. "We will not be defeated," Amara declared to her warriors, her voice filled with conviction.
This is our destiny.
"We are the ones who will restore Nchua to its rightful place." But even as she spoke, her heart wavered. Was she truly ready to face the man who had once been her family? What if, in her quest for vengeance, she lost the very essence of what her father had taught her, to rule with honor and compassion? Amara fought at the front lines, her sword a blur as she cut through Yuzo's soldiers. The sound of clashing metal filled the air, and the ground was soaked with blood. Finally, Amara stood before her uncle, the man who had taken everything from her. His eyes were cold, devoid of any remorse. "You were always too weak," he spat. "This throne was never meant for you." Amara's heart was torn as she raised her sword to strike him down. In that moment, her father's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of the greater purpose. "Lead with wisdom, Amara. Vengeance is not the path of a true ruler." She hesitated, then lowered her sword.
"No, Uzo.
"This is not the way of our kingdom. You will be held accountable, but not in this way." With Yuzo defeated, Amara stood before the people of Nchua, her heart heavy but her resolve unwavering. She had reclaimed her throne, but it came with a price. Her journey had changed her, hardened her, but it had also taught her the value of compassion, of leadership that was about serving her people and not seeking personal glory. As Amara took her place on the throne, she felt the weight of her father's legacy on her shoulders. "I will lead with honor," she vowed, her voice strong. "I will restore Nchua to its rightful place among the kingdoms of Africa." As Amara looked out over her people, she asked herself, in the pursuit of justice and power, how far can one go before they lose themselves in the very thing they sought to defeat? Would you have chosen vengeance or mercy in Amara's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comment section below.